Hello, beautiful souls. And firstly, I would like to welcome you to StarFlower Journals. My name is Kerry, and the purpose of these journals or podcasts is to create a safe space for beautiful souls, wherever they are on their journey, their spiritual journey, their life journey, to have a platform to speak about that journey, where they've been, what they've discovered, how they've healed from within, and what tools and wisdom that they've taken from their own journeys. With looking at the world at this moment in time, there's many platforms where you see many beautiful souls that have much knowledge and wisdom, coming from quite a lot of top influencers. And my intention, again, is to create a real space of people's real journeys, something that everyone can relate to. So, with me today, I have the beautiful April. Hello, April.
Hi.
And April is coming on to talk about her beautiful journey and where it's taken her and where she is now. And she's also going to share her wisdom and her knowledge and the tools that she's discovered along her own path, along her own journey. I will say to everyone that there may be a little slight lag within the conversation because of internet connection, but we'll go with the flow. We'll just, be patient with the recording. Yes. And we'll take it from there. So, April. Hello. Okay, April.
Hello, Carrie.
Hello. So myself and April, we know each other quite well. Yes. We've been on this journey for how many years now? 4 years? 4 years?
Yeah, something like three,
Yeah. Round about
4 years. Yeah.
yeah. And we've conversed throughout those 4 years and we've grown and expanded and evolved together. So it's an honor and it's a privilege to have our beautiful April with us to talk about her journey. So, April, when did your journey begin? What did your journey look like?
Well, I think that I've always been on my journey, and what do I mean by that is that from a very young age, I had a lot of trauma in my life. Um, but that I don't I think that that's when I became aware that I was working on myself my entire life. So when I was very young, it was like very magical. I think that like a lot of us remember magical things happening in our childhood.
Yeah.
But then my parents got divorced, and within that, like it created some chaos, but also it really forced me to look at myself and like the position that I was in and taking care of my siblings and being responsible and all of the things that go along with having like uh, divorced parents, and my specific situation was more of my parents got divorced and then we moved in with my grandparents. And so it's interesting because I look back at my childhood and I look back at like some of the magical moments that I had. And I at a very young age I saw like things, right? Like I felt like I was part of a magical garden at one point, like when I was playing, and it was just beautiful, right? Like the beautiful parts of being a child. And then all of a sudden this hit, and like it forced me to grow up, and it forced me to be
Okay.
responsible and like look out for my siblings and all of those things. And so along with that, I had other traumas from before then, meaning my parents were, this is kind of a trigger warning, Jehovah's Witnesses, and it created a space for me to feel different
Yeah.
because I was brought up from the time I was born to probably about the age of 7, I would say, when my parents got out of it. And if you know anything about Jehovah's Witnesses, it really created a space for me to feel alienated and different. I couldn't do things that other kids could do. I was around those things. Do you know what I mean? Like I was around other kids that were celebrating their birthdays, that were celebrating Christmas, that were celebrating holidays, that were going to school and they got to celebrate their their birthdays and everything in the classroom. And so it created a different space for me because I couldn't do any of those things. Like when we did art projects in school, for example, I would have to go paint or something. Or when there was a class party, like surrounding like a holiday, I would have to leave. I would have to go home. And so it created a space for me to feel very different from other kids. And I'm grateful for that now because it gave me the opportunity to um, navigate feeling different, right?
Yeah.
Um, but also like as I grew, when I was getting older, I was part of youth groups and I went to different churches after we had gotten out of being a Jehovah's Witness. I like explored religion and I felt that that's what I was supposed to do. Um, and we went to different churches, we tried out different churches, and my grandparents were very supportive of that. And I was part of different youth groups, but it's interesting because it never felt like super comfortable to me. I always felt that there was something that didn't feel right for me.
Mhm.
And so now I know that that was, for lack of a better term, the spirituality community like makes more sense to me. I feel like we're all connected.
Yeah.
I feel like religion just uses different words, but I think that I'm connected to everything. Everything is me, like everything's energy. And I don't know, like it's just, it didn't ever feel right being in an organized place to like pray or like look into what God means to me or anything like that. So it was different. It was this was part of my journey, is what I'm saying, is I went through that process to know how it felt. And I always associated it with being a Jehovah's Witness. I always associated me feeling different in like churches as being me being a Jehovah's Witness, and it just didn't feel good to me. You know what I mean? Like that part of my life jaded me. I thought that's not actually what it was. I was picking up on my intuition and like what that really meant for me. Excuse me. And so, um, you know, after my parents got divorced, it was like my parents did some things that like I shouldn't have known at a very young age. Like they shared information with me because I was the oldest and mostly my dad. And I think that that really put me on my path to healing
Okay.
because it made me question why he would say certain things to me. It made me question why I was in the situations that I was in at a very young age. And not to get too in depth in those, but like being responsible mostly, right?
Yeah.
And so I would try having conversations with him, or I try having conversations with my mother, or I try having conversations with my grandparents who took us in after my parents got divorced. Um, and not all parties were willing to participate. And I realized very early on that I had to really do those things for myself. If I wanted to heal myself, if I wanted to expand and move forward and get out of that traumatic experience and that hurt, I needed to work on myself and move through it myself. I always knew that I had to get to the other side of it.
Okay.
And so
Yeah.
I feel like in my teenage years and my early 20s that that was a huge part of what I was doing. And then I got married and settled down and had my own family, and it kind of like all those things got pushed to the wayside, but also all those traumatic experiences were still with me because I hadn't moved all the way through them.
Yeah.
And so it affected me and raising my children and, my relationships. And so it's interesting because when I had my first son, I realized that I didn't know how to play with him. I had to grow up so fast, didn't have a childhood. I mean, I had a childhood, but it wasn't
Yeah.
the normal
Yeah.
childhood, right?
It's almost
It
like,
was,
yeah, you could, sorry, April. It was almost like you
that's
could
okay.
allow that child to have fun, to play, to, the birthday parties and explore that side of things. It was almost like that child was suppressed and it was forced to grow up, would you say?
Yes, 100%. And so I realized that I didn't even know how to play with my son. Like I didn't know what that looked like. And I had this very like heavy feeling about it. It was upsetting and it was hard to figure out, hard to navigate.
Yeah.
Um, and then I went on to have, I have 4 children, so I went on to have my next son, and it got a little easier. But I don't think I ever, looking back at being a parent, because all my children are adults now, looking back at being a parent to my children, I don't know if I've ever been in that space where I was just fun and free flowing and of course you have to have structure as a parent and discipline and all of the things, but I wasn't ever the fun parent. I wasn't ever like, I always was structured. I always had to, like, because of my traumas and because of my past, I had to participate. I didn't have to. I chose to, out of trauma and being unaware of that trauma and how it was affecting me, I chose to be a perfectionist almost. Like I had to control every part of every moment of my life. Um, so I didn't get hurt again. And so it's interesting. I was the biggest advocate also for my children. And that's probably what my ex-husband's, so I'm divorced now. My ex-husband's and my arguments were mostly about is protecting my children and being advocates for my children and standing up for my children. I just actually realized this more this weekend than ever before, that, I sit there and self-reflect quite often. And I feel like I was really advocating for them to protect them from what I had experienced. So something in my ex-husband, I feel like showed something about my past. And like the traumas and the abuse and all of those things are coming up again, right? And so I had to protect my children from that feeling. And so my husband and I ended up, or my ex-husband and I ended up getting divorced 14 years ago. And uh and we did things much different. And I'm grateful because I think my traumas played a big part in making my ex-husband aware and myself aware of what my parents' divorce did with, how I reacted to my parents' divorce, the traumas that accumulated from it,
Yeah.
and how we want to do different things in our divorce for our children. Because when I got married, I didn't get married to ever get divorced. Like I had the intention to never get divorced, no matter like what I was going through, because that's what my experience was. I thought that that was the right thing to do. Well, we're in a situation where it wasn't healthy for anybody. It wasn't healthy for our children. It wasn't healthy for us. And when I left, I set the intention to be happy. And that was the pivotal moment in my life and my healing journey. The moment that I set the intention to be happy was the moment that my life changed forever. And it really forced me to dive deep into my healing, and not by choice. Like I was not consciously aware of this.
Yeah.
Um, so I like got into another relationship with my now husband, And we had some arguments early on. Of course, you have like to figure out how to communicate and all the things, right?
Mhm.
But I think that when I had the disagreements or when we had the interactions and the conversations, excuse me, that it really had me take a look at myself and what I was doing and like why I had, a response to something that was talked about in a relationship or in our disagreement or whatever it may be, right? Whatever it was coming up,
Yeah.
it really forced me to look at why I was reacting the way I was and where'd that come from, and to go back and heal that and feel that and, move through it to get out of it. I'll give you one example. Um, One of the things that came up for me was I felt like he was always going to cheat on me. He never gave me any reason to believe that he was going to cheat on me. Where'd that come from? And why am I like so adamant that this is going to happen to me?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this is one of our disagreements. And I like sat there and why do I respond that way? And so I traced it back to my early relationships, in my early 20s when one of my boyfriends had cheated on me nonstop.
Okay.
And I was very hurt in that relationship. And I just felt like everybody was going to do that from then on. And so so I don't believe that you have to do this. I believe you can do this on your own. But I reached out to him on like Facebook Messenger and I said, hey, I just want to take my power back.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to, not that he was controlling, but our situation was controlling my happiness. And I'm like, I want to take my power back. I don't want that to like control my life anymore.
No.
And so we had a conversation about our relationship and what that looked like and how he had cheated. And he said that that wasn't fair. We were young. And I said, that doesn't give you the right to cheat on me just because you're young and because you're
Yeah.
inexperienced. You didn't have the respect, right? And so he's like, you're right. It wasn't nice and it wasn't fair. And I'm sorry.
Beautiful.
And that was it. Like I moved through that. And that was probably the last moment that I had where I reacted in our arguments the way I reacted. But then that cleared that out. And I realized other things, right? I had abandonment issues, and that comes up in my relationships. It was coming up in my current relationship to my now husband. And um, when we get in disagreements, he needed his space. And I was like, I need to fix it. I need to fix it. I need to fix it. I need to like just keep talking to make sure we're okay.
Yeah.
So with him needing space and I needed to fix, I wasn't able to let go of, him needing, I wasn't able to give him needing space. And so we worked through that as well. There was a few times where he actually left the house, and that's where we realized that I had abandonment issues because I would get physically sick. My stomach would be super upset. Like I would feel like I'd have to throw up. I would get like super stressed out. He's leaving me. Is he going to come back? Like
Yeah.
all of those things were coming up. And then we realized that I have abandonment issues, right? I was in my 40s before I realized that I had abandonment issues, which I'm grateful that I am aware now. But I was able to work through that too. And we were able to work together in what he needs and what I need to realize that he doesn't have to leave. I can like back off and give him some space if we're able to
Communicate.
continue talking about it and get through it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Get to the other side of it. And so now he doesn't feel like he has to leave when we have like discussions or disagreements. And I
Lovely.
don't feel, and if he does, if he needs space and if he like, okay, I need to, go somewhere for a little bit, then I don't feel like I'm like, okay, well, you go do you and I'll be fine. And it's totally changed in my relationship now. It's totally changed in my life where I don't feel like when he needs space and he actually has to leave, that I don't have the same response in my body anymore. Like I don't have the is he gonna come back? Is it gonna be okay? Like all of those things too.
Yeah.
Um so so that catapulted us forward, from, the intention, right? The
Yeah.
intention of me wanting to be happy catapulted me forward into that healing journey. But what even did that more is in 2019, we ended up getting married in 2014, 2019, I ended up having a brain tumor. And I didn't know how much that this experience would do for me. And it has like catapulted me so far forward in my healing journey. It's crazy. It's like you have these moments in your life that like you get to choose. You get to choose what you do with them. You're gonna be held back or you're gonna go forward, right? And so I saw this as a blessing, actually. The day that I had it was December 10th in 2019, and I had brain surgery 2 days later and was out of the hospital, I think the 18th. Um, but our lives were super chaotic. We were doing everything for everybody else. We
Okay.
weren't filling our cups first,
Yep.
uh, which I think is super important to like realize, but we didn't realize it at that point. We weren't paying attention. And I believe that if you're not paying attention to the things that are happening with your body, with your environment, with your energy body, I feel like the universe will step in at some point and like say, you're not listening. And
Yeah. Well, they do,
that,
and it
and the brain
does.
tumor was that.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
So would you
And
say,
so I believe go ahead.
sorry, April. So would you say, I sometimes like to call these moments in life like tower moments. And it's always what, from my experience and from observing many others around me, they go through these tower moments, and it's almost like it's an awakening as such, an awakening as to the self. And that's when it starts to become very interesting, which I'm sure you're about to share at this moment in time, and where that actually takes you.
Right.
But you'll have like many tower moments throughout your life. And some of the audience here maybe not even know what an awakening is, maybe doesn't even know what intention is, doesn't even know what intuition is. But when you have these awakenings, and I'm getting goosebumps as I speak, when you have these awakenings, you almost awaken to that. And that like is intuition as such. It's like the soul is saying it's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. But like you said, the universe will always send you messages. They'll send you these tower moments. But like you said, the tower moments is like a choice point. Are you going to wake up to what's going on in your reality, or are you going to remain stuck and stagnant? So, yeah, very beautiful. Keep going, April.
Well, yeah, 100%. I believe that we either listen or we don't.
Yeah.
And and sometimes when we're having those moments, it's very overwhelming and it's a lot, right? And to be aware, I think during those moments that you're always safe and you're always protected and you're always, exactly where you're supposed to be in those moments. And it's really uncomfortable, but growth is uncomfortable. And
Oh,
so these things that I've had to move through in my life, like are they like fun and parties and whatever? No, it's not those things, but it is on the other side of it, it is that. It's it's the best thing that I've ever experienced in my entire life when I get to move through the tower moments, because then the beauty is on the other side of it. What you get to experience on the other side of a tower moment is, and I'm not saying that it's like all rainbows and unicorns, right? There's
mhm.
still stuff to move through, but it's like the experience in itself, I believe, can be the most beautiful experience if you choose for it to be. And so this is what my choice was. I mean, not consciously, I don't think I consciously made the choice, but I've always moved through the things in my life instead of remain stuck and stagnant. And so the brain tumor, it was challenging, like it affected the communication center in my brain. And so one of the symptoms to me having the tumor was I lost the ability to speak clearly. I wasn't able to pull words out of my brain and like speak them. And then when I did try, like it was all mishmashed kind of almost. And so after the tumor was removed, which was the size of a lime, um,
Wow.
it on my healing journey from that, from the physical healing part of that, is when I came out of surgery, I wasn't able to talk. And my husband was in fear of the fact that I wouldn't be able to talk ever again, which I am able to talk. I'm here to prove it, right? Like, but
Yeah,
it's just
like wow.
it I didn't I didn't let anything stop me. And that's something that I believe is a good thing too. Like when we're going through these moments to be aware of like how uncomfortable and how scary sometimes it can be, but don't let that stop you. You're strong and I'm strong and I moved through it and I learned from it. So in January, after I had been home and recovering, and I've been going through, physical, occupational, and speech therapy, um, there was a moment where I was called to do energy healing. I didn't know what that looked. I really didn't know what that looked like. So I used to work at a day spa, and one of the massage therapists were going through a program, and they had, and I don't know if it was Reiki, I don't know like what modality it was, but
Yeah.
they needed hours of experience, and so I volunteered. And so she's like, I'm not going to touch you like massage, but I'm going to work with your energy and I'm going to like hover over you. And it was a beautiful, crazy, not crazy bad, but like crazy in a good way. It was a great experience. But I didn't know that that's what energy healing was. And so I got the intuition, the nudge to seek out energy healing. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should reach out to this person. Well, we're not friends on Facebook. And it's been a really long time since like I worked with her, and she didn't even work at the same place anymore. And so I didn't even know how to get in touch with her other than Facebook. And so I couldn't, like, you have to be notified
Yeah.
and you have to go into your messages to like realize. And so she didn't, there's a reason for this, I believe. She didn't ever realize that I messaged her. And so then I went on to go to the next person to find, you know, there was another person that I worked with at the same day spa. She was a hairstylist that went into energy work as well. And so I reached out to her, started a couple of sessions. Like it felt great, but this is where you really have to pay attention to your body and how it feels.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because as much as I loved her, she wasn't specifically for me. And like I was doing great work with her and it felt really good, but like again, it didn't feel like it was for me. And so there was one of my good friends had reached out to me and said, I know this person that's real close to us. She lives right by us. And she's like, reach out to her. And so it was, after the holidays, and I set up an appointment with her, and we started doing in-person energy healing. And so the very first time I went, my husband noticed a huge difference in me, which is amazing because he always thought that I needed therapy.
Okay.
And for me, therapists and counselors and psychologists and psychiatrists and like I haven't had good experiences and they don't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel right when I go see them. Like it doesn't make sense to me in my body. And so after with this first session, he said, I always thought that you needed a therapist. And he's like, I
Wow.
think that this is exactly what you needed. Because he could see the shift in me. And so that just continued, but it also made me aware that this is what I wanted to do. This is what I want. I felt my entire life that I've been a healer. I just didn't know what that looked like or how to use it or like
Yeah.
how to work with energy. Yeah.
What is
And
it?
so, yeah, exactly. And so in me going and having that done, I was like, oh, well, this is what that looks like. And so I signed up for Reiki, and it like taught me how to work with energy. Um, But then I did Reiki too, and it was like I couldn't get through the class. Like I got stopped almost. And so I'm like, why is that? Why do I have such resistance? Because I'm not supposed to be doing Reiki, I'm supposed to be making it my own.
Yeah.
And that's where I am at this point. I am working, using energy, using like what my knowledge of what Reiki is and making it my own. And so that's where your intuition, I think, comes into play a lot too. Um,
Yeah,
but
agree.
now I'm in these beautiful spaces where, I get to interact with individuals like you and, some of our other beautiful friends. And I really found home. And I and if you think that you're ever going to be done working on yourself, no,
No, absolutely not. Like I found
no.
that
It's just
one.
layers on an onion.
Yeah, layers and layers and layers. And then you never get to the bottom. You never get to the bottom. But that's okay. That's
But
beautiful.
when those layers come back up again, yeah, when those layers come back up again,
Yeah.
it's easier to deal with them and get through them. Like each time another layer peels back from a situation that seems very similar, it's easy. I just had this happen over the weekend. It's just so much easier to get through, and you have tools instead to use where you didn't probably have tools before. The first time you go through something, I mean, you have tools, but you don't know what that looks like to get to the other side of it. You learn those tools through the other side of it, and then you know what to do the next time that comes up, and then the next time, and then the next time. And it only gets easier because you add more tools to your tool belt then.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like a discovery of the self, the like this
Yes.
awakening journey, this spiritual journey, whatever you want to label it as. And there are many beautiful souls that are maybe watching this right now, sitting there going, what are they talking about? And
Yep.
that's okay. That's okay. Um, so April, your journey is taking you up to this point. So would you say that your tower moment was the brain tumor that, awakened you further? Would you always say, you know, prior to that, like this innate, like calling within, like like you started questioning things in your life? And, like,
From a very young age. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, from a very, very young age. And like, what did that feel like? Like, did it not feel right? For anybody that doesn't know what intuition is, um, what do you mean by your intuition? Like, how did it not feel right?
So, for example, when I would go to church, like the different denominations or whatever that looked because like I said, I tried different ones. And so everyone was a little bit different denomination. And when I would go in there, it's not like the church itself, like the teachings or no, it was all of it. If I really think about it, it didn't it didn't feel right in here. It's like I didn't feel in the right space. Like when you are in a space, pay attention to how your body feels and how your body reacts and how you react emotionally,
Mhm.
because I think that that's where your intuition is trying to let you know that this isn't right for you. Um, that's evolved for me, like the goosebumps that you get and
Mhm.
that you just spoke about. Like that's how I know that I'm on the right track now. Like I get the truth bumps. If I'm supposed to be doing something. But then that's not how my body reacted. I had to start paying attention to my intuition. And then my intuition was like, okay, well, this is what I'm going to give you when you're on the right path
Yeah.
is the truth bumps. And so, but like the biggest part of how that feels is like not feeling right, like feeling uneasy or feeling questioning. Like there was lots of questioning um because it didn't feel right. And
Yeah.
so it doesn't feel right. Then, you add the layer of, questions and then you're like, okay, so why am I having these questions? And so it's like you're almost having a conversation with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
when you're working with your intuition at first. And I mean, I think that that lasts, that continues, but it's different as it develops and moves forward. Um, I think that there can be more physical like feelings in your body, like like not ailments, like I think that when sometimes when my intuition in the very beginning was trying to make me aware of something, it was like a sick feeling in my stomach almost, you know? Um, I think back to like when that boyfriend that I was talking about had been cheating on me all the time. I knew it, and I knew who it was with, and it was like you have a thought process,
Mm-hmm.
and then you know you find out that that thought process was truth, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so it's just kind of confirming that intuition then. And so we don't pay attention to the thought process. I think when we're not aware of our intuition. I think that we're not paying attention to um so I hear and I see and I have the knowings and I have the feelings. I have it all, right? And what's been hardest for me to or most challenging for me to do or to, navigate is how I get information at different times because it's never the same. And so it's navigating how your body's working with you
Mm-hmm.
to bring through the intuition also. And so some of it's the knowing, and some of it's like hearing, and some of it's like a vision. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's interesting because when you start paying attention to those things, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger until it's just part of you. Like right now, it's just part of me. I don't even like think twice about it. Like it's not, it's just who I am. It's
Yeah.
who we all are, but we're taught not to pay attention to your intuition, to pay attention to everything external.
Which brings me on my next question. Beautifully. Thank you, April. So when you got married, you talked about suppressing. And what's really interesting when we suppress, there's normally something external to that that's allowing us to suppress. We create distractions, would you say? So would you say, married life and children and work and, everything external to you was almost like a distraction. And with the distractions, we don't, because we're suppressing, we don't want to look at that sort of thing. We don't want to feel what we're feeling. We're too scared to look at that. So this is maybe where addiction comes in. This is where we maybe turn to alcohol or we turn to something because it's just something that
Food.
we're avoiding. And I'm not saying that happened with yourself, but many other beautiful souls.
No, I did. I turned to I use food and I am very aware that I use food and I have for a really long time used food. Yes, you're absolutely correct. Um, that suppressing is not, you get busy in life. You
Hmm.
get busy in life, right? You get busy being married and having your children, exactly like the suppressing, right? And so you're not facing all the things that are coming up and why they're coming up. But even like as a child, I used food to eat. I remember um, as a child going like when I could like was old enough to go to convenience stores. I remember going to a convenience store and getting like the prepackaged donut boxes and like eating half of them, right? And so did that make me feel good? No, it didn't make me feel good. But at the time, I felt like that was going to make me feel good.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because I am very aware that there's moments even now where I either suppress my eating or I binge eat, right? Like that's just part of like, so there's different scenarios in my life where it's causing stress. It's a stressful situation, but like I can't remember exactly because I don't do this often anymore.
Mhm.
I can't remember exactly the two different scenarios that happen, but one makes me not eat and one makes me eat.
Mhm.
And so it's interesting that I'm very, very aware of that behavior, right? And that's a trauma response. But I think that it's gotten way less because I've been doing my healing,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. Um, but also when and I hope that this helps people out there because I think that we unconsciously do things, we subconsciously do things to fill holes and gaps in our body. I didn't get the love and attention that I needed when I was a child, because I was in between like three groups of people, my mom, my dad, and my grandparents. And I felt like I was always in the middle of a three-way fight. I had a boyfriend, I think at 15, and I chose to have sex really early. And why I think I chose to have sex looking back on it now is to fill a hole.
Mhm.
And it never filled it. I never felt loved any more or less. And I would have chose to do things way differently now. Now that I realized, and now that I've been on my healing journey more and have the awareness of what that looks like, because now it feels very different to me than
Yeah.
my 15-year-old self.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, like that you brought up addiction because that is like, and I don't think that I was a sex addict. I was just using it to fill a hole.
Yeah. Like from my experience and observation with myself and many others is that we do create these, addictions, etc., because there's a null and void within our own self.
Yep.
What I've also recognized is that we're in a time where we're returning back to the self. We've
Yeah.
had years and years and years and years and years of distraction, okay? From, the world. The world is a distraction. The media, like everything's a huge distraction. And it pulls us away. This is what I believe. It pulls us away from really connecting into who we are. So when we have that tower moment, that catalyst point, like you said, you sit and you go, wait, what? And you question everything. You question yourself, you question reality, you question those around you. Like everything becomes a huge, massive question. And from my experience, when I woke up to that, April, I felt like I was losing my mind. I felt like I was going crazy. And you maybe hear people talking about going down a rabbit hole. Well, that's for me, that's what that was. The questioning was a huge rabbit hole. And it was like, how deep do I have to go to get to the bottom of it? You know, and it became like, for a couple of years, it became like a hunger, like a passion, like, oh my God, this has been in front of my face my whole life. Like, I'd never heard anything about energy. I never heard anything about vibration. I didn't hear, like, and even you guys watching this right now might be like, whoa, what is she talking about? Energy, vibration, frequencies. I didn't hear it. I didn't know anything about that. And it was always like a belief that angels and, spirit and, you play with your chakras and you had tarot cards and you go to people for readings and you just thought like they had a gift, like they were gifted. But and maybe you can share a little bit about this as well, April. But when you awaken and when you start discovering who you are, something turns on with that, with like inside you, right? Something turns on. And it's like, let's say it's the consciousness that turns on. You awaken to your consciousness, and your consciousness is so intelligent, and your consciousness can read energy, and your consciousness can read fields. And what I realized when I awoke to this was that these gifted people, they were just maybe a different consciousness, and maybe a different frequency and vibration. And we all have this within us, but it's whether we choose to awaken to that. And what I feel right now with everything that's going on in the world is people are beginning to question. And people, when they begin to question, they start turning themselves on. Their intuition turns on. Things start happening within themselves, and they might go down this rabbit hole and they might feel like they're losing their mind. And maybe some beautiful soul watching this right now is in that space at this moment in time where they're like, what is happening? And like it's almost like reality around them starts to fall. Reality around them, like you question what's real and what's not anymore. Would you agree?
100%, 100%. And the rabbit holes at first are more of the, for me anyhow, from my awareness and observation, it was the external world and what was happening with it. So, um, what happened in 2020, right? That was my rabbit hole moments. Um, and I've had those previous and I shut them down. So you have a choice. I had both my husband and I had a moment where we had the opportunity to go down rabbit holes in 2012, and there was information, outside world information, like your reality, and he questioned it and he put on the brakes and he was like, nope, not going any further. And so 2020 happened and we started going down rabbit holes again. And again, rabbit holes can look like very different or like any kind of different things. Like most of the time when from my experience, it's outer stuff, like outside, like environment, like what's happening in the outside world kind of things, causing you to go down rabbit holes. And then you start to turn on, you start to realize truths. You start to like open up to like possibilities. You start to like realize who you and what you are. And then you find, I think this is like when I found my people. Like this is when I found, because I'm raising an awareness and consciousness and vibration. I think that those things naturally, you're led to those things and they're naturally attracted to you then too, you
Mhm.
know? And so it's interesting because you feel a little crazy and you're like, because it's like all of these layers falling away. It's
Mm,
like what your belief systems were and what you've always been taught and told. Like I've always questioned some of those things as
mhm.
far as, like look at the religion part of me. Like that never felt right to me. And so I had to figure out what that was for me. But like all of the outside world, like just kind of starts to crumble away. And then you like find out your authentic truth and what that is. And, I feel like you're more centered then. Like you're more aligned after like you go down the rabbit holes and you feel the craziness and you feel the pieces falling away. I feel that that's when you feel more like yourself ever than before,
Yeah,
like your authentic self.
yeah. Not the labels, not the labels, not the looks, not the seeking, not the validation. Like you are, and this is something I'm working on at this moment in time, you are safe and secure within your own self. Nothing external from you creates that. You create that. And like what's really interesting, what was coming up there for me when you were talking, April, this rabbit holes is that remember how I said everything's always in front of you? Let's go back to Alice in Wonderland. And let's go back to where she's chasing the white rabbit. And the rabbit goes down the hole and she had a choice. She chose whether she was going to stay here and not follow that rabbit, or she chose to go down that hole with that rabbit. And she went down that hole, and what happened when she went down that hole? She went into another reality where she started to experience magic. and she like met all these wonderful magical, people and beings and creatures, and she had to, this is my perception of it, she had to use her discernment as such as to whether those were good or whether those were bad. And by using the discernment, you use your intuition, like you said, April, like, oh, what does this do to me? What does this do to my body? And what I discovered throughout my lifetime until like I came to that tower moment when I woke up was that I wasn't listening to that. I was following society. I was following like what should be, and I was putting pressure on myself, and I was like giving myself a hard time throughout my life because we had to. Or, if you don't achieve this, then you're a failure. If you don't achieve that, then you're a failure. And it kind of pulls you away from that. And it's almost like you've become programmed, it's just my opinion, of being a robot. You don't know who you become, so detached from who your authentic self is. So, if anybody's out there watching and, asking yourself, what is your white rabbit? Because everybody has their own white rabbit, I believe. It's like not just one white rabbit, it's like you choose that rabbit and you choose to go down that hole. But, you know, would you say that the journey that you've been on, would you say that it's been a journey that, okay, I don't want to put words in your mouth, April, that has been that's been an interesting journey where you may portray as being one of the hardest journeys, but also one of the beautiful journeys. For myself, it's been one of the most hardest journeys ever. But I would
It,
also,
it's interesting. It's interesting to like look back on, because right now, the space that I'm in right now, I am in such peace with everything that's happened. Um, I mean that I don't have moments where I'm still moving through things, but I'm so grateful for the experience. That I sometimes I get lost in the fact that it was so challenging. Other people outside of myself notice more than I do at this moment in time that I've been through a lot and I've overcome a lot. But I don't let that define me, um, and the person that I am, and I don't get stuck in there. And so it's interesting to me that that's not what I pay attention to anymore, is the challenges that I've had to overcome and that I've gone through. But just the space that I'm in, and I'm so grateful for it. And I really mean that I'm truly in gratitude for all of the things. I wouldn't be the person I am right now if I didn't have all of those things as part of who I am. Um, we do have, an opportunity to stop doing whatever it is that we're doing to heal or not to heal. And I want to say that if you choose to not move through things, you're going to stay unhappy. Those moments where you're triggered, a trigger moment for me is what is this trying to teach me? And I'm at that point right now where if something's upsetting me, if something's triggering me, if something's like doesn't feel right, why doesn't it feel right? I start asking myself questions. And then I keep asking myself questions till I really get to the bottom of why it's bothering me or triggering me. Because um, when you're asking yourself the questions, it's the surface level things that come up first. Well, it's because my husband did this. Well, no, is it really because my husband did this? Why would I be triggered by that? Because that's his stuff,
Mhm, mhm,
right? If if I'm really triggered by something, it's my stuff. And why am I triggered by it? Because it's more than likely something that's coming up in me to move through. So, at this point, I ask myself questions to get through it and to have the awareness and to be grateful for. I mean, I'm not saying the intention to be like I just am. I just am grateful for those moments because then I get the opportunity to move through it and heal it. And so I think that it's challenging for me to see the difficulty in or the challenges that I've moved through. I mean, it's there. I see it. I know it. All of the things, but I'm not in a space where I think I dwell on it anymore. Because that's something that, I don't think is helpful. It doesn't assist you in any way, if you stay stuck in that space. So, um, moving through it, it feels so much better to me, you know?
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
yeah. Why this is why we're here. This is why we're talking about this because, we all have our different experiences. No one's experience is going to be the same. And, with everything, that's going on, like I've mentioned in this world, etc., people are at different stages of their life. People are at different stages of their journey. There might be at that stage right now where you were questioning the surface level questions, but they don't know quite how to get to the deeper questioning. Some people may be at that stage where they're just waking up to their reality, sorry, goosebumps, their reality around them at this moment in time. And like it's very scary when you start doing this work. And it's so uncomfortable when you start doing this work. When you start seeing the reality around you, seeing the people around you, seeing the roles that you played and the roles that they played. And, you're gonna go through, some people call it dark nights of the soul, right? Like, I don't know about you, April. I went through heaps of them. Like, I went through so many dark nights of the soul. Some days I didn't want to get out of bed. I just didn't want to face it. And that's okay. Like, people will have days like that. But like you said, it's not, dwelling on it. It's not sitting in that and allowing that to take over. It's, feeling what you feel. And I believe, everybody's raising an energy, frequency, and vibration, and they're feeling more. Their intuition's coming up. Maybe they're totally unaware of it, but they're feeling more. So feel what you feel, but don't get stuck in that. And there's many tools like you can get out of that. And maybe April might share how
You,
she
you
got out of that.
You bring up a good point as far as being a feeler, right? Like it's interesting because it was probably in my mid 20s, early 30s that I realized that I was an empath, to
Mm-hmm.
put a label on something, right? And what is an empath? It's for me, I believe that it's feeling other people's emotions. That's what it was for me then. Like if somebody was upset, I could feel that like super strong. Was I upset? No, it wasn't me, but I didn't have a heart. I had a challenging time um deciphering, I guess, between whether it was mine or whether it was somebody else's, right? Because I felt it so strong in my body. Which is interesting because that's just feeling other people's energy. And what's also more interesting is when I started dating my second husband, he's also a feeler and he didn't know what that was. And so I was able to talk about how I was and how I felt other people's emotions and energies and that kind of thing. And he's like, well, maybe that's what I do because we very often get into conversations where he was like, well, you're feeling this way, and tries to tell me why I'm feeling that way. And he may be wrong at the why, but he's right at the whole that I was feeling that way because that's what energy he was picking up on. And so we're not taught about any of those things. And it becomes very overwhelming if we're not aware that we are that type of person that feels other people's energy, or it's not just other people, it's just, sometimes it can be collective. I don't feel that really anymore, but I used to. It used to be very overwhelming to me. But also like going back to what you were sharing about, these not just tower moments, but what did you call them? Like sorry, my words are failing me right now.
I've forgotten.
Like the things that you're experiencing, right? Like your
Yeah.
shadow stuff
Yeah, your
coming up.
shadow. Yeah, 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 yeah. Your dark
Uh,
night. Dark night.
Dark night of the soul. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you. For me, when I've been experiencing that, it is sometimes very challenging to move through because it's so overwhelming. But when you're moving through it, it's not, there's no mistake. You're supposed to be trying to move through this right now. And so when it feels overwhelming, you reach out to people. When it feels overwhelming, it can feel like anxious. It can feel like all kinds of different things, right? I remember when we were going through a workshop and it was the beginning of the workshop and I was like, I had this happen to me and I was just like, it was overwhelming. It was intense. It was, I could remember like I had huge anxiety come in and I was outside hugging trees and grounding and talking to the people that are closest to me for support and energetic support and like using the tools that I had learned along the way to get through it. And I got through it just fine. And what I thought was a medication that I had taken was causing it because I react that way to medications. But on the other side of it, I realized that that's not what that was. And I'm grateful that I mean, to the extent that I would be willing to take that medication again. I know for a fact, I have a knowing that that was not a medication driven thing that happened to me. It was, I had to move through this. I was expanding, I was growing, I was raising my consciousness because I stepped up and took this workshop. And so I was learning new things and I was, doing work on myself. And that created that opportunity to move through the dark night of the soul, right? And so it was a lot, it was overwhelming, but at the end of the day, like I got through it and was using my tools that I had learned or had picked up along the way. So I think that when we're going through intense things too, we need to remember that we do have tools. Sometimes we just forget what they are in the moment when it's so overwhelming or you have such a reaction to moving through something.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with you there. It does sometimes get overwhelming. Even now, it gets overwhelming. And, I've been on this like full inner healing, dealing with doing my shadow work, as it's also known, for the past 4 years. And even now, I'm still doing shadow work. And sometimes that can be really overwhelming. And I forget what tools, I forget like the simple basic things. But that's okay. That's okay. You kind of, this is where it's important to listen to what your body's asking, like listen to your body. Like you said, you went out and you grounded and you hugged trees. And I could feel maybe there was a little bit of laughter there. Oh, she's a tree hugger, right? Right, okay. Let me tell you about trees and tree hugging. I am also a tree hugger, right? And that's okay, right? When you're on this journey and you start awakening to yourself, why does that make you feel uncomfortable? If you're laughing at that, ask yourself, why does that make you feel uncomfortable? Because people say you're nuts when you hug a tree. Well, let me tell you something. When you go through this journey and when you start awakening to yourself and you start doing the work, etc., the no comes online. You don't care. You don't care. Like that comes online. Sorry, I'm going to swear
Being
here.
your authentic self. Yeah, being your authentic
Eh,
self.
Because you have to be your authentic self. So no fucks come online, right? Literally none whatsoever. And you go hug that tree. You go do whatever you need to do. If people are going to laugh at you, let them laugh at you. They're laughing at you for a reason because they're uncomfortable within themselves as to what's being presented to them in their reality, and that's okay. They're on their journey and you're on your journey. So if your body's telling you to go hug a tree, go hug a tree because there's something so beautiful within trees, there's something so beautiful within nature. It creates peace, but you're also connecting to that grounding, and that, the body needs that. The body needs that voltage, within itself. And throughout the years, like, I've done research, and I go through periods where I like research to the point, right, stop now, because my brain can't take anymore. And then I go back through it again. And one of those times was with regards to grounding. And when we're not grounding and putting our feet in soil or hugging trees or, putting our feet in our sand, etc., the voltage within our body decreases. And I know you know this. And this is when dis-ease comes in. So there's many different things that could occur within your physicality, your mental health, etc. Like, honestly, try it. Like, if you're listening to this today, I ask of you if it's right, okay? You don't have to do anything, but if you're sitting here going, oh yeah, I think I will, just take off your shoes, go and stand outside in the grass. Take off your shoes, go stand on the beach, go at the beach, go in the water. Water's amazing, right? April, water's amazing for like your journey, your spiritual, like, it's a tool. Nature is your tool. And society pulls you away from that. I mean, look at everything around you right now. They pull you away from nature, and nature helps you with your awakening, with your journey. Like, if you asked me 5 years ago to go hike a hill, I would have told you to beat it. I would have told you, beat it. There's no chance. There's no chance of hiking a hill. Now I love nothing more than getting out in nature, hiking a hill, going to my favorite beach when I can. Recently it's not been much, but yesterday I was there and it was amazing. You just feel so much better when you're out in nature.
When you're not, when you haven't grounded like intentionally before, think about how you feel when you go to a beach and put your feet in the sand or in the ocean. Like think about how that makes you feel. We associate it with vacations, right? But it's not the vacation, it's the actually grounding part of that that's making you feel better.
Mhm. And you'll feel better
We
within
get so caught up in the busyness of, yeah.
life. It pulls you away, right? It absolutely pulls you away. TV? What's TV for? You know? Yeah, what's TV? I'm just dropping little seeds, okay? So what's TV for? And this is something like, and maybe you can agree as well, that I discovered throughout this journey is that, these things are created to distract ourselves from ourselves.
But
Never
what
mind work, kids, family life, society. Well, excuse me. Sorry, guys.
what's also interesting about what you just said about television and other outside distractions, when I went through the brain tumor, um, it created something in me where I can't listen. I can, but it's very challenging to watch TV. I have to intentionally, like, there was a period of time afterwards where when I would watch a TV program, it would create me not feeling well. It would create something in my body. And so I didn't do it very often because it actually physically made me nauseous if I did it too long. And so I had to really be mindful of what I was watching and how long I was watching it for. We binge watched like a TV program. There was like 2 or 3 episodes that we watched in a row. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. And we shut off the TV and that it was like quiet in my house for the first few months after the tumor actually also just because I needed it was chaos, like even people talking, a lot of people talking, it was too much. And so that can happen now too, but also what's also interesting is music. I used to listen to music in the car. I can't do it anymore. And so my husband's a big music listener and my daughter is too. And so they still do that, but they're very mindful of, we're getting in the car together, then they're turning the volume down. And so it doesn't, it doesn't feel as icky to me, but it like really still physically makes me nauseous sometimes. So I
Mhm.
have to be mindful. It's interesting. That's just paying attention to your intuition then too, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But it's also outside distraction too, is what I feel about it. So maybe I buried myself in that before, and now I'm not able to because I'm standing in my authenticity and
Mhm.
who I really am, and I can't do anything but that. I can't be anything but me now. And that's interesting in itself, where the judgments, that you feel from others, they
Mhm.
become far less and you do you. And you, like you said, you don't give two fucks. No
Yeah.
fucks given just because you can't there is something in you that makes you just be authentically you,
Mhm.
and you can't like lie, and you can't be somebody that you're not, and you can't you know put on like this false narrative. It's interesting because I used to get lash extensions and I used to do all these things to make myself look better because of the outside world and what they thought of me. And I really had to I had to get to a point where I had an opportunity. My lash artist was going to a different city and I wasn't able to follow, had to find somebody else, had an allergic reaction, couldn't wear lashes anymore. But also that's something that defined me. And so I had that layer of myself had to fall away, and I had to learn to be okay with that because that now was defining how I was as a person. And so it's interesting. We create these things on the outside. Sometimes they're physical, sometimes they're not. And we really, once we take those away, it gets you down to how you feel about your authentic self. And why am I hiding behind lashes, right? I want to feel younger. I want to feel pretty. I want, the society puts this label, well, on people. I don't think it's just women,
Mhm.
for us to look a certain way. And I know that it's people in general because my husband feels this too, and in an opposite way that I do. And so it's interesting that like once you're on your healing journey, I mean, really on it and really looking at your stuff and really just can't be anything but your authentic self, it's really challenging to do anything but.
Mhm.
I mean, I wear very minimal makeup at this point,
Mhm.
but I mean, sometimes it makes me feel good, right? Like it's a energy and a vibration as well. I'm not doing it for anybody else. I'm doing it for myself, and that's I think what the difference is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at this point, I think that I could even get lash extensions back on if I chose to, because then I'm doing it for myself and not for anybody else.
Mhm.
I'm not doing it for what the world thinks of me. I think I'm doing it for what it makes me feel like. And but what you dive deeper in that even, why does that make me feel good, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And like yourself, April, I used to be like that as well. Like I used to feel that I used to like have to look a certain way, and you know, I always straighten my hair. I'd never leave the house without makeup. I'd like you'd never see me dead in hoodies and a pair of leggings, like never. And when I was going through this awakening journey, that's all I lived in. I had no makeup on. My hair was all over the place. I wore like no makeup, hoodies and leggings. Like I was completely unrecognizable, but I was comfortable with that. And like I had to remove all those layers to find who I was. And it was like the no fucks. Like, I don't care if people think I'm pretty, fat, ugly, whatever. It's like I don't care at that moment in time. And it kind of got bothered me a little bit because I was unhealthy when I was overweight. I was unhealthy and I knew I was unhealthy. But then I allowed a distraction to lead me down another rabbit hole of getting myself back in shape. And that's okay. That's okay. Like, there is going to be certain things that will get motivate you and do things that you're meant to do, but question why you're doing certain things. Question like April, like, why do you need lashes? Why? Are you doing it for yourself or are you doing it for others? This people pleasing. And like I was the biggest people pleaser. Still am to a degree, I put my hands up, but I'm working on that. Um, and as a kid, I used to worry, like really worry, if I wasn't pleasing people. And I used to make myself so ill as a kid because oh I didn't do that and I'm not wearing that and oh my god, like, and I see it with my two daughters, like, oh no, I have to get up at such and such to get my makeup on and do my hair and blah blah, and it's like, oh Lord. And I used to worry just as much as they worry because they have to look a certain way because that's what society portrays, etc. So yeah, the lash thing holds huge significance, April, with what you've said. So, yeah.
People pleasing and being a giver are two big things that define me as an individual or had defined me as an individual. I think that I'm people pleasing less these days, but I'm still like a giver by nature. And I think that that's how we authentically are because I think most of us are really authentically heart centered. And that's how I believe that's how we're supposed to be. Um, but boundaries is a huge piece of this. And I've learned through my limitations and the things that the tumor put in place for me, because I still have physical things that happen when I'm not paying attention to my energy. And so maybe I didn't talk about that enough. When I had the tumor afterwards, it really kept in place. I had certain things happen when I wasn't paying attention to my energy. And so I spoke a little bit about, our lives being chaotic before the tumor. And then afterwards, we really sat and looked at our life and like, and we're super grateful for, the space that we're in, but like had felt like we had to do things different, right? Um, and so the tumor actually has things in place, or the tumor that was removed have, the whole surgery, the whole situation have had things in place because I think the universe knows that I will fall right back into people pleasing and being a giver. Because that's where my heart is. I like doing things for other people. I like being a giver. That's truly who I am, to a fault. And so I know that the universe knows this, and I know that it had to put things in place to make me aware of where I'm not paying attention to my own energy. Like I have to fill my cup first, and then everybody else follows. And if I don't have enough energy to do this, that, or the other thing, then I can't do that. And I actually get stopped now. I get a headache. And then if I don't listen, I get nauseous. And if I don't listen, then I get emotional. And if I don't listen, then I get irritable. And then the last thing that's in place is I get it's my memory is affected. Like I forget how to do things. And one day I had this tested and I woke up and I couldn't even remember how to turn on my laptop. Couldn't remember how to turn it on. And I'm like, and I panicked and I called my husband because that's what I do when I'm like in
Yeah.
distress. And so, I didn't ask him to. I was fine after we spoke, but he left work and he came home and we went on a walk and, just spent the day in nature and really balanced myself back out. But these things are put in place, right? So they're my boundaries. They're my boundaries that the universe put in place for me. But now I have to be the one who puts boundaries up for or in place for my family, my children, my husband. And that sometimes when you haven't had boundaries before can be super challenging because they haven't experienced that from you before. And so there's resistance there, but you need to stick to it if you want to have boundaries.
I agree.
So I got a lot after the tumor had happened and the healing had happened, process had happened, and I was starting to set boundaries in place for myself. Well, I changed. That's what my family would tell my kids specifically. You changed, mom. No, I haven't changed. Well, maybe I have in some ways, but like they're good changes in my opinion. I do believe that it was challenging for them to see the boundaries me that I was putting up, and they had to get used to it, and that's okay,
Yeah.
but it's uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah. And
That change is uncomfortable sometimes, and having boundaries is uncomfortable sometimes.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And, people are fearful of change, I've discovered, very fearful of change. And it's like it's something that's wrong. Oh, you've changed. Like, why, why, why does society make it feel that there's something wrong if you've changed as a person? That's okay. I think that's beautiful. It means you've grown, you've evolved. But this is an important thing to mention. This is something I feel is important when you're like on your journey and you're on your awakening or spiritual journey, whatever you want to call it. When you're changing, in April, maybe you'll agree with this as well and experience this as I've experienced it. When you're evolving and you're changing, there's going to be people in your life that's been with you your whole life. And when you start evolving and you start working on yourself, you may be already experiencing this if you're watching this. People will just start falling away from your life. And that in itself is a journey that can be very painful. It can be very hurtful. However, what would you say was your experience with that? And what advice would you give others out there with regards to that? It's a big part of it,
Well,
I
it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. I have had that experience. And in friendships but with family, I think is the hardest. Um, when we're working on ourselves, I believe that we're on a path where we can't ignore it anymore, right? Like if you're going forward in your healing journey, you're in this path where you really have to pay attention to you and your boundaries and all of those things, right? And so I've had this happen with friendships where they've just kind of fallen away or like they don't make sense anymore. But it's like you feel like you did something, but you actually didn't do something. But the other person perceives it as you did something, which is super interesting to me. But stay strong in your truth, first of all, and what your authentic truth is and what your experience is. Their experience is their experience based on their perception. And that's not your perception, and it's not your reality, and that's okay. But family is a little bit more challenging sometimes to navigate, especially when it's a parent. I had that happen specifically with a parent. Um, and it was my father. And there was a situation where all of his children, so there's four of us, speaking with him. And it was for several years. And I had a hard time with it, mostly at first. I began to be grateful for it because it allowed me to review how I felt about our relationship.
Yeah.
It allowed me to review some of the toxic things that were happening in it. It allowed me to miss him. It allowed me to see what I haven't gotten from him. It allowed me to have growth in my own space. Um, and that doesn't have to last forever. It doesn't like when somebody leaves your life, it doesn't mean that it has to stay that way. It only stays that way if you choose for it to stay that way. And there are some situations where I totally agree that it should stay that way. If somebody's toxic to you and not doing anything for your happiness and vibration. If they have toxic behaviors, then maybe review that and look at that and like see if it's something that makes sense to you or not. Um, for me, because I've learned so much about boundaries within myself, I got to a point where I reached out to my dad. It was my little sister first, and then it was me second, like a couple months later. But when she did it, I knew that that wasn't time for me. Like I just knew I was listening to my intuition and I knew that that was okay for her to do. And I guided her and supported her and, told her just to be aware that, what she might encounter with reaching out to him and not having any expectations about that. And it turned out being fine. They didn't have like a huge conversation, nor did it happen often. But several months later, so this was probably August, I think it was like around Christmas time, I felt the need. I felt a huge push to want to reach out. And that was again my intuition speaking to me. I'm like, I kept thinking about him. I kept being pushed or called to like call him or reach out to him. Um, and he knew only because I called and left him a voicemail about the tumor that had happened. But he didn't know what my life was like. He didn't know anything about, he hadn't reached out to me since then and that kind of thing. I had a interesting experience before I reached out to him though. And hopefully the listeners don't think I'm too crazy, but I had a dream and the dream was him and I having a conversation. And what he said to me in that conversation was, he just didn't know how to go about a relationship. He wanted to relate a relationship with me again. He just didn't know how to go about it in his physical body. And at that moment, I knew that it was my soul speaking to his soul. And when I woke up and like really sat with it, like I knew that this is my higher self speaking to his higher self or soul or whatever that looks like for you, right? Like I knew that it was part of us energetically that was speaking in dream time, which was interesting to me because I had never had that happen before. And when I started speaking to him, I reached out to him and he was grateful that I had and my sister and I and him had breakfast and it lasted for like hours and we're just speaking about all the things, catching up and whatever. And I still am in contact with him and I still have a relationship with him. But during the first interaction that we had when we were at breakfast, I said, "You're gonna think I'm crazy because I mean, he doesn't do work on himself, nor does he like have any energy awareness, right?" But my little sister and I were talking about energy that day, but also the dream that I had had. I told him and he's like, "What?" He had an awareness of the same thing that I
Wow.
had experienced. He knew that we had a conversation. He knew that his physical body, what his human wasn't able to, he didn't know how to navigate that. He didn't know how to navigate starting a relationship again or saying that he missed us or, that kind of thing. But his soul he knew he had a conversation with me, my soul. So it's super interesting. And now I'm very aware that it's not perfect and I've changed and maybe he hasn't. I mean, he has changed in some ways, but the things that make him him are mostly the same still. The things that were somewhat toxic behaviors, but I have boundaries now and I get to choose what I participate in and what I don't and accept him for him being at the stage that he's at in his life. And if he wants to know something, I get to share those things with him. And if he doesn't, and if he's resistant to it, that's okay too. And so it's just a growth process, but also I think that this has happened with numerous It can look like what I'm getting at is it can look different. It doesn't have to be not communicating at all, right? Like not having a relationship at all, because I have that same thing happening with my mother right now. And we still are communicating. I haven't like completely removed her from my life, but I don't talk to her very often because it's challenging. I still have some traumas to work through and healing to work through with my mother and my grandmother. And so I have some grace about that and know my boundaries and my limits to where I can participate and where I
Yeah.
can't right now. So um, just to pay attention to yourself and where you feel resistance and where it feels like you need to reach out or when you don't, you know.
Yeah.
Family
Yeah.
can be the most challenging things when these things happen, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a journey within itself. There's all within your own journey, there's many journeys, there's many roads, there's many paths, there's many things you're going to experience. And family is one of them because it's the core. It's the core. It's what defines you as a child. It's what defines you as you're growing up. It's what's your stability. It's what's your security. That's a major shift. Major, major shift within yourself when you start
But I
wakening up.
also feel like, yes, I also feel that like we encompass all of our experiences from childhood up until now, but you don't have to be defined by those experiences either. Like you get to choose what defines you, you know, when you're becoming more conscious and more aware, you get the choice of what defines you and your person and your human and your soul. I mean, you don't have to let all of your experiences, all the hurts define the person that you are. You can still be this beautiful soul. I think that sometimes when we go through all these traumas in life, you know, you begin to feel unworthy because of the traumas. And I do believe that a lot of the things that drive us come down to self-worth and what our belief system is about ourselves and everything else, like the world. And so how do you feel your worth is and what is your belief system about, you know, anything and everything? Ask yourself when you're, what's my belief system about that and why is that? And pretty much you can trace it back to a situation from, you know, your past or your childhood mostly. Your childhood traumas, I think, drive the bus most of the time.
I agree with you there. I well and truly agree with you there. Maybe that's something we can talk about another day, April, if you
Yep.
back on.
Yep.
So we're getting to near the end of this beautiful conversation and April sharing her beautiful journey with us. Thank you, April.
Oh, thank you for having me on.
Oh, anytime it's a privilege and it's an honor. Like I'm very honored. Thank you, beautiful. Very, very
As
honored
am I.
to
As am I.
share this. What I will ask you though is, do you have any knowledge or wisdom or advice that you would like to give beautiful souls that are, on their journey, about to begin their journey, or, at the space where they need to be within their journey? What advice would you give?
Listen to yourself. Let's start to try to navigate what intuition is. Um, because that will lead you to the most beautiful places. And the places that it leads you to is the places where you're able to heal the most. Um, like I've talked about the spaces that it led me to. I mean, one of the spaces is yours, right? And so I think that your soul just brings you to a space where you're accepted for who you are, your authentic self, and for you to be able to do the most healing. And I make it sound really easy. It's not. I mean, it was easier for me than it has been for some of my friends that I've, you know, heard experiences about. Like, it's hard to navigate these different social media platforms. It's hard to navigate, and I'm not giving energy to that, but it is challenging to have discernment about different people if you haven't been paying attention to your intuition before. And so I feel like I have always been, in some way, shape, or form, whether I listen to it or not, been aware that I have intuition. For the people that aren't aware of their intuition and how that works for them, um, before trying to seek out communities, I would try to navigate what that looks like for you, for info, or like for the intuition part of that, for you to feel into how a space feels. But also, like, don't be afraid to jump in, right? And then learn. And if the space isn't right for you, then leave and find somebody or find somewhere else to be. But have community is what I'm trying to say, is because other people have similar experiences to yours and they can support those experiences with their own experiences. And you will find your people. Eventually, you'll find your people, and it feels like home.
Beautiful. I have to agree with you there, April. It does. Feels like home. Feels like you've found your family. And
Yeah.
not taken away from your blood family, but you find your family. You find your grounded roots as such. It's a beautiful,
Yep.
beautiful, beautiful journey.
100%.
So, one last question, April. If anybody wants to connect with you, how would they connect with you? How would they connect?
I am, so there's numerous ways. I'm on Facebook, April Rose Healer. Um, I am on TikTok as April Rose Healing. I do have a small YouTube channel, April Rose Healing. And then I have a website, April Rose, and then dash healer.com.
Okay, beautiful. And I will provide the links to all of these like sites, these platforms. If you feel pulled to April and resonate with April, get hit her up. Watch our YouTube because, this is the interesting part of this journey, just very briefly. When you start awakening and you start doing your healing, you just want to help others. You want to be that of service, regardless of what that looks like. You know, from myself, from Starflower, well, Glartic is my foundation for Starflower. And it was like I just wanted to paint. I just wanted to wake up these things within me that I suppressed for so long as a child. So when you start doing this journey, you just want to be out there, you want to be of service, etc. And our beautiful April is stepped into that space and it's beautiful. And thank you, April, for sharing those with everyone. And she welcomes you with open arms if you feel comfortable and you feel that it's right for you. Go for it. Like, we're all here to help each other. We're all here to help each other. We're all here to hold each other's hand. And this is where this needs to be in this world right now. There's been so much dividedness as such. Even, I don't know if that's a word. Is that a word? We've been divided so much. We've like pushed each other apart because of race, religion, color. It's, we're the same. We're all, like you said at the very beginning, we're all connected. We're all one. So it's time for us to all come together now and stand together and be that love together and radiate that love into the world. It's beautiful. So thank you, April. I'm very,
Thank you.
very honored. Thank you. Okay, beautiful soul.
Thank
So,
you.
thank you for watching ourselves today, myself and April. I am very honored that you're here watching us. If you've watched to the very end, thank you. This is a beautiful journey that you are on. And, if you ever feel you need to reach out, reach out. If you ever feel pulled to reach out to me, reach out to me. Like, all our links and details are there. So, guys, I'm going to bode you well. Keep learning, keep growing, keep evolving, and keep connecting to yourself. That's the key in my reality. That is the Holy Grail, is the awakening of the self. So, I love you. I will see you again soon. I will speak to you all again soon if this is on podcast. And take care.